Hello, and welcome back to Place of Assembly podcast. This is the podcast where we think about the role of space in cultural production. Place of Assembly is produced by H0L0 NYC in partnership with experimental sound studio Chicago and 8 Ball Radio. Today on the pod, exciting organization from Hong Kong, continuing our series on China and Hong Kong. We welcome onto the pod Soundpocket. Soundpocket is an organization dealing heavily with sound, as the name implies, looking at sound in every medium, in every context, in every place, putting together events and classes in a variety of interesting locations that they will tell you more about. They're also active as facilitators, partnering with a variety of organizations to present opportunities for people to consider the role of sound in their environment. Fascinating organization. Excited to have them on the pod. With no further ado, Soundpocket. Check it. Hello. How are you?
Hi. Greetings from Hong Kong. Great.
Amazing. Okay, cool. So welcome to Place of Assembly, Soundpocket. Vanessa, Mandy. Maybe Vanessa, say hi so we know who's who.
Hello.
Okay, cool. So Vanessa, Mandy, Bet, I'm going to dive right in and ask you the Place of Assembly question, which is, and by the way, it's fine if you guys have different answers to this question. So you can each answer it, or you can answer it together, however you want to do it. So the question is, what is the most intense or craziest or most ecstatic event, or it could just be the most complex event that you've ever been a part of, wherein you had some type of organizational role or some type of responsibility, whether you were organizing the whole thing and getting the space, or whether you were curating it or something like this, but just an event that stands out in your mind as like super extra that you had a hand in putting together.
Well, maybe I'll go first.
Okay.
So like back in 2017, we have been organizing this event called Being There in Japan. And then we actually have some artists ranging from musician, sound artists, choreographer, and also dancers to perform in a train, like a moving train in Japan. Mm-hmm. And then they have been like performing on platforms and also like interacting with the audience and also the participants in that event. So that comes up to my mind when you're talking about like some really crazy ideas we have been working on with different space and interaction with people.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. That sounds intense.
Yeah, for me, it actually reminds me of a recent program that we did last year. It's called Unconstrained Tone. It's actually initially it's a performance that by 20 artists, like 10 artists working on moving image and 10 artists working on sound. But when like the pandemic go on, it's very difficult to do all the preparation. But we have been working on this for a year, and in the end, it become like an online screening of 7 new compositions that created last year.
Amazing. Also sounds like quite a feat. So I want to ask you something about the moving train. Did you ask permission to be on the train doing this?
We did. We actually have a partner in Japan, and then they have been talking to the train like company and see if like we can fit in one of their train that's like specially designed, because usually we have the seats that are like 2 by 2, and then on that train it's more like the metro that we sit on the side so that the performers can actually move around, and then like when we enter the tunnel they will open the window that we can like listen to different sounds. And also they have been like some artists have trying to do something like naughty, throwing some water balls into the, it's not like into a platform, but then on where people waiting for the train. So people who are taking the train or waiting for the train can see the performance too.
Okay, interesting. And the audience for those performances, was it just whoever happened to be on the train at that time, or was it like promoted, like you tried to get people to come to see the performances?
Well, for those people on the train, they are already like registered for the event. But then there are always people, because we don't want to like how to say, to disturb the daily routine of Japanese like train, because they're always on time and they have to be there no matter what. So it's like kind of like a challenge. But then for people who are waiting on the platform, they can also see us. It's more like in and out.
Yeah. So one other thing, that sounds very well organized. That's amazing. One other thing in Japan, correct me if I'm wrong, every train station has a different little song. Do you know what I mean? Like
the jingle.
Yeah, the little jingle. Maybe I made this up, but my recollection is, I've been to Japan a few times. My recollection is that every stop has a slightly different little like when you get there, you know what I mean? I'm just wondering if anybody incorporated that into their work.
Not really. They focus more on like what sound they have been listening on the train, or like the interpretation on the sound, or some pre-recorded, because there is this artist who have been using like his radio to like maybe doing different movements, so that it will be interfering the frequency and stuff to make some like noise and also sound on the train too. So, yeah.
Okay, word. Well, I have immense respect for the Japanese subway system, so that's cool. That's cool that you did that. It's an absolutely excellent subway system, highly recommended. And then, so with the event, Mandy, that you were talking about, that where you did the 20 artists, you said that, did that actually take place like at the you were doing all of the organizing and everything, but did it actually take place like at the beginning of or during the pandemic?
It's actually started before the pandemic. So we planned everything. It should be started in late 2019. So actually that by that time it's actually a little bit difficult, because like the social movement, that it's not an easy time for everyone, but still we're trying to like gather everyone, because like we think that we need an escape from the daily to talk about art, or just escape from the news every day we saw. And then when we gradually developed the project, and it comes the pandemic. So actually we really want to insist to do a live performance, because like it's really have the aesthetic and the acoustic is very different from what you saw online. So we try to insist, but still, like after 2 times of postponement, we decided to put up a marathon online screening in the end.
Okay, got it. Yes, yeah, you're not alone in that. And so you said that in the beginning of the project, so the project was kind of bookended by, on the one side, the social movement in Hong Kong, and then on the other side, the pandemic kind of creeping in. You said that there was like a certain amount of difficulty in some way associated with the social movement in Hong Kong, and you felt that it was important to have this place to gather to, discuss art and aesthetics and sound and whatnot. Can you describe that a little bit more, like how the social movement in Hong Kong at that time impacted your organizing, and why you felt it was so important to move ahead with it and create this place to gather?
Actually, the project started with a series of workshops with some like artists mentor. And then I remember by that time we do the workshop like after work hours. So, but those hours actually when like traffic was suspended due to like some movement, like some roads are occupied, and we even worry like that we really wish that the artists could join us, but at the same time we also worry that they couldn't find way home because like the traffic is blocked. But still, we think that because like it's really hard for everyone to know how to respond to the social movement at a very instant moment, or even using art to respond it. but still we think that like just having a group of people gather and talk about it is already very important as a mutual support to each another. Yeah.
And how was that experience, actually doing it? Did people kind of, in spite of the difficulty of moving around and everything, was it your perception that people like appreciated and valued you holding that space, or how did it go?
Yeah, and it really does, because like at the end, like by the new composition really done like by June 2020, like quite a few, there are 7 new works, and like half of it is actually somehow related to the movement, so that they have been collecting like materials from themselves, or even found images or found like audios that they could put together in their piece. So it's actually also give them like somehow they could respond to what happened, because it's really hard to have like doing artwork that is totally isolated from what's happening around us. Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. So both of those events sound fascinating. And so let's get in a little bit to who you guys are and what you do. You guys are Soundpocket, and I mean, I want you guys to tell everybody about what that is. But I have a quick question: is Soundpocket a team of 2, or do you have a bigger team?
We have been always a small team. I remember like the maximum size is 6.
Yeah.
Is it like it's already the maximum size in the past decade? And currently we are a team of 4. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. So just, for everybody out there listening, just tell us what Soundpocket is and what you do.
So Soundpocket, it's an art organization from Hong Kong. We are promoting sound art and also listening culture, like to create this community for people who have like interested in sound, and also willing to be in there and listen to their environment, or to discover, like open their ears and discover their the surroundings through sound and also listening.
Okay, and then and let's go. You guys have a really diverse array of programs, because you present exhibitions, you have a library, you do research, there's an aspect of facilitating and some sort of teaching or didactic dimension to what you do. So maybe can you give us an overview of your ongoing programs?
So maybe I can start first, and then Mandy will talk more about each item. So we have like field focus for the first, artist support and also learning community. We have been supporting some young artists with our artist support program, and this is our 10th year doing it. So this year we will be doing this like 10th year artist support program anniversary showcase. Like for our alumni and also artists who we have been working on, to have an exhibition in a quite interesting space upcoming, that will be having an exhibition in some shop fronts that is in this traditional like old style shopping mall in Hong Kong that is like popular in the 80s and 90s, but now like not many people are going. And this is like one of the artists of a program. And also we have different programs targeting different like artists who are working with sound or interested in sound, that we have this mentorship program too, that we would invite like a foreign mentor, like artist mentor from other countries to have some workshops with our local artists, and then together they will be going on this research trip to different countries and coming back to have a public workshop with the like public in Hong Kong. So it's like an exchange of ideas and also discussion between artists in different countries. And for our public program, like focusing on public, general public in Hong Kong, maybe we can talk more about that too.
Yeah, so for public program, actually most of our program are free and like available to all, because like we receive like funding from the government, the Art Development Council. So our program like it's tailored for a large group of audiences. But also at the same time, we have been receiving a lot of invitations from different art organizations in Hong Kong, from for example, like Hong Kong New Music Ensemble, who are a group of musicians that doing contemporary music, and also like a literature magazine that they will also initiate cultural programs that would like to have the audience to learn about the neighborhood from a sound perspective. And also even from an educational level, there are like an organization called the Gifted Education Association. They also like invited us to like give a series of workshops to their students. So to just to broaden the different audience that we may come across like over different programs.
Mm-hmm. Okay, amazing. So I have a number of follow-up questions based on everything that you guys have just said. So we're gonna dive in. The first thing that's in my mind is we've been talking for a few minutes, and you guys have said the word sound many times, but not the word music, which is fine, which is totally fine. That's totally, but I'm interested in learning about what your interest in sound is. And like, I'm always really fascinated by people who have an abstract interest in sound itself, you know? And so I'm interested in what your interest in it is and how you became interested in it. And also, are you more interested in sound as it functions in a kind of time-based arts or fine art context, or are you equally interested in presenting music? That's a big question. So any part of that you want to respond to, I'm here for it.
Yeah, that's really a big question. But I think why it's sound but not music, because like sound is more formless in a way that there's also somehow like implied in the name of the organization, Soundpocket, that we believe that like sound, when you put in different like pockets, it will become different shape. So it's actually could be like implied, and or you could adapt it in different medium, and that's why it's also, we think that it could be like cross-disciplinary medium that could work together with sound. And I think that's the most interesting thing, because like everything that it doesn't really have a like concrete definition of sound. Everything you find it interesting or find it like, oh, I have never heard about it, it could be sound, and then could be something that we could look together from a different view. Yeah.
And I think it's more about like being there, because like we have been always talking about like if we can move some of our programs online. I mean, it also work in some ways, but then we also appreciate that like people can actually be in a space to listen to the soundscape itself. And because like it's kind of different with what we hear from people, that they describe to us like what this place look like or what this space actually have in special. But then we would have some like we have been doing sound walks and also workshops to bring people into the space and listen to the environment at that time, at that moment. I think this is like what we also appreciate in our programs, like in a specific moment or in a specific place like that. That's why like we're moving around and trying to like find the sounds that might be like special to us, or we found some meanings that we think people might be interested, so that they can listen to it by themselves too.
Okay, interesting. And so just for clarity, and again, I mean, I am a musician, but no pressure coming from me, but like, do you ever, I'm just curious, do you ever present just like concerts of music, or is it basically all like soundscape, installation, sound art, time-based? Do you understand what I mean? I'm just trying to understand. I know, for example, that you've worked with Eli Kessler, you know, who's a musician, but I imagine that I'm pretty sure from looking at the materials on your site that what Eli Kessler did with you guys was an installation.
We did like performance that is like you could say it's sound app, but it's not could be music. Like especially last year when there are many events are suspended. Then one of our partner, ESS Experimental Sound Studio, which is located in Chicago,
Friend of yours too.
yeah. And they invited us to put together a concert that online that we presented two local artists. That one is Nerve and one is Brian. And so, as you said, though, those are like really concerts that we presented. Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I'm just wondering if that was included in your kind of purview of what you do. So how did you arrive, or how did each of you arrive at this place where you have this very heightened interest in sound? I mean, I think that I'll just riff for a second. Like, I think that sound is I mean, I'm not going to make any big claims, right? But it could be, let's put it this way. It could be argued that sound is like the most visceral material, you know? I mean, maybe smell as well, but like sound for sure is very visceral, right? Like people have a much easier time tuning out something visual. Like if somebody's in a space and there's an image on the wall that they don't particularly like or care for, right? It's fine. They can just look the other way or just sort of tune it out, not really think about it. But sound, if somebody's in a place and there's sound that's like they find to be really bothersome, it feels very oppressive to that person. Do you know what I mean? Now, I think most of the people that we deal with probably are inviting these kinds of experiences where there's like more difficult sounds to work with and consider, you know. But if you do end up in a situation like maybe on the subway, somebody who's not expecting that sound, they experience that as like very oppressive, like make it stop, you know what I mean? Whereas like visual noise, there's so much visual noise around us all the time, like especially in cities, you know, and people just tune it out. It's like they don't even really think about it. So anyways, this is all just to say sound is like a particularly like visceral medium, like an intense experience. And I'm curious what brought you guys to this place where you wanted to form an organization for the consideration of sound.
Well, I guess for me, it's more like the personal connection with like something abstract. I don't know like how to explain this, but then like for like every day we're seeing so many things like with our eyes, but then like for sound, as Mandy just mentioned, it's more like the imagination, as you have also talked about. Like it will just go away if you are not listening to this moment. It will just sleep and you can never like go back. Even like how I record the sound with the best like quality of in like recorders or stuff. I think it's more like being at that moment, and also how to describe it. Yeah, it's more like the personal connection with sound, that it's not feasible. Like we can have the score or everything, but then it's like me and the moment that I can enjoy, or like I dislike or like it. I don't know if you can get like what
I know. I understand what you're I think I understand what you're saying in that like you can only go so far with like having sound, in the sense that you have a score. Let me say this a different way. You can only go so far in really understanding what sound is before it just becomes completely abstract, and like you're just like relating with it in this like highly personal way, making decisions about what's happening, and it's something that's very like intense and personal. That's what I took away from what you said, but if I'm not understanding, you should correct me.
Yeah, I think it's more like that. But and also about the like memories, or like the thing I have experienced myself that I can connect it with sound. I found that fascinating. And also by learning, like different artists have been using maybe some instrument, or no like some materials to maybe replicating some sounds, or like there was these two artists who is from Japan that they use dry ice to do their performance. And like when you listen to it, it's really like when you're listening to some sea wave or some water that is like unexpected. So I think the possibility of sound, it's also something that fascinates me a lot.
Mm-hmm. Okay, got it. And Mandy, how did you come onto this path of sound?
I think it's more like from where I joined like Soundwalk when I was still like studying in university. And it's so different. It's joining a Soundwalk is so different from what you're going to see in exhibition. Because like when you go in an exhibition, you are somehow expecting what you're seeing, and that's why you go. But when you took away to, but when you like go for a Soundwalk, it's a total unknown journey that you would go, and I think that's why it's so interesting, because like every time, even when you go for the same walk, it's different. The time that you go, or the day that you go, it will somehow affect what you heard. And and gradually, and from what I learned about sound from Soundwalk, then I understand like how a lot of artists using sound to like navigating in the city. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, fascinating. Yeah, I mean, organizing around sound and gathering around sound is also like something that I think about, is that it's like it's ancient. You know what I mean? Like people have been creating sound and like bringing people around to hear the sound, you know? Uh as far as we know, that's been going on for a very, very, very long time, you know. So there's like I feel that like in the kind of like gathering around sound, there's a kind of a connection to the distant past. I mean, I don't know if that's something that you think about, but it's something that I think about. So I'm gonna pivot and ask you a series of different questions. You guys were talking about you briefly touched on your kind of funding model, where like you are receiving funds from the government and from certain arts organizations. And I was just wondering, like, how is it for an organization like yours in Hong Kong? Is it something that, you know, there's a lot of support for, and you guys are able to, it seems that you're able to get that support. But what's that experience like? Like something in, you know, in New York City and in America in general, that all artists, you know, complain about and are upset about, is that there's like very, very, very little support for this kind of work from the government and from institutions and stuff. It's very competitive. The sort of grant and foundation based world of the arts in America is very small relative to other places in the world, right? Now, there's lots of other kinds of resources that we have a lot of that in other parts of the world there aren't as many of, right? So whatever, it's a mixed bag. But what is that experience like in Hong Kong? Like just trying to do what you do and raise money and be able to support your programs?
Yeah, so Soundpocket is actually a registered charitable charitable organization, so that we're able to raise funds by ourselves, but at the same time, we are also eligible to apply funding from the government, which is like granted by the Hong Kong Art Development Council. So there are actually a lot of different types of grant that ADC that are supported, from like project grant or to like year grant. Even within year grant, you could apply like 1 year grant, 2 year grant, or 3 year grant. So it's actually has been a very fortunate of us of able to get the 3 year grant from the past few years, so that our funding is able to be very stable, so that we could support the operation of an organization, but at the same time also like create different programs that we wish to do. And also besides this like year grant funding, also for some like other small scale like program that we did, it's actually supported by the different organization that invite us to do. Because usually when these organization comes to us, they will also propose a budget for us to do the program, and also that helps a lot for us to like expand the reach of Soundpocket, because like when we take a project of another cultural organization, we will be able to like meet their audiences. So that's generally is how the operation of Soundpocket.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like there's actually a pretty formidable amount of support for what you're doing. I mean, hearing you talk makes me feel like you guys, had this idea, reached out and started looking for support, and were able to garner that support. I mean, you guys have been doing this for 10 years, so maybe it wasn't that way right in the beginning, but it seems like you've managed to develop a significant amount of support and you're able to, do your thing. That's amazing. That's amazing. If I were to ask somebody in New York or Chicago or LA that same question, they'd be like, "Oh, God." They'd just be like, "Really, it's really a struggle for a lot of folks." I mean, not commercially. Like if people are doing commercial music, there's a lot more support for that. But for like the kind of avant-garde territory of cultural practice, it's something that like from a governmental perspective in America, it's just not really acknowledged. You know what I mean? So that's amazing. Congratulations. The next thing that you guys also touched on that I wanted to move into is, and also understand how this relates to your interest in sound, is the teaching and facilitating aspect of what you guys do, because we've been talking about the exhibitions and the performance activations and interventions like on the subway or in the storefronts and whatnot, which is all super fascinating and respect. But there's also this whole dimension of what you do, which you also reference, which is like working with people to understand their neighborhoods in terms of sound. And you mentioned like promoting like a series of workshops. So can you guys tell us a little bit more about that end of things, and why is that an important aspect of Soundpocket, to do the facilitating educational work in combination with the exhibitions and whatnot?
Well, maybe I can start with one of our like project that is the library by Soundpocket. It's actually a website that have a collection of materials like sound and also sound related exhibition and some writings by artists and also the public that we collect online. And for our education program, we have been focusing like not only sound, we promote also the listening culture, that it's we think that sound collecting, it's also one of the artistic practice that like from the way, like for example field recording, the way we put our recorder, or like where you want to put it and what you want to record, it's like your choices, and we cherish those experience of you like listening back to your audio too. That is like it's your own creation. And also we have been like teaching people with different sound collecting techniques that they can use, they can practice and also use in their daily life, like visual representation and also collecting sounds with words. That is also some kind of like art practices that we would like to promote in our library. And
yeah, and also why like education is so important, and why we really wanted to like take the role as a facilitator, because like really emphasize like to build a learning community around like people that we encounter through sound art and listening. Because like usually when we for example the mentorship program, every edition of the mentorship program there is a theme. So we have been looking into about field recording, deep listening, writing sound, and sound borderscape. Like these are actually areas that we're not familiar with. but like together when we gather a group of artists to form a learning community, we learn together. We actually just will be visiting different people, having a lot of different discussions, and going for a research trip just to learn about like what is this actually within this area. So and that's why it's actually this learning community not only form together with the audience, but also together with the artists that we work with.
Mhm.
Because usually we also found that the resources that emerging artists receive is not a lot, yeah, to be honest. So that's why some of our program is want to like focus on this development of the artist. So somehow when they able to continue to develop their artistic practices, they could actually contribute to our program and also contribute to a wider scope in the art community as well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So two questions about that. What I'm taking away from what you're saying is that most of the people that you're working with in the context of facilitating an education are artists. But are you ever working with just the general public, or are you ever doing workshops with like school age children, or like is it mainly like workshops for artists interested in sound?
There are different workshops that we have to, and for artists are part of it, but a lot of workshop that we also did with secondary school student, primary school student, and yeah, even general public. That maybe some public workshop that we create along some performances that we try to have a different layer or perspective to let the audience to understand what they're going to see in the performance is actually they could be also doing certain creation like through sound.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So then my next question about that is, this is going to sound like I think maybe a stupid question, but why is it important for like, let's say you were talking about gathering a group of artists, right? And then learning together. So like learning as a community. Why is that important?
Because like this is my personal answer, because like I believe no one knows everything, and also like every one of us have different interests. Some of us may be like more into something academic, or something will look for inspiration from daily life, or like yeah, different way that you couldn't really expect, because like everyone have a different very lifestyle, and so that we will encounter different people. So by gathering people together, there is a lot of information that could be shared. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And what is the impact of having those learning environments in a community artist setting? Like, have you found that there's like a particular impact on your community, or something that like when people, because I'm asking this question, of course, I mean, I absolutely agree that like establishing like a learning community is like of extreme importance, and it has like a kind of like impact on those communities. But I'm curious to hear your experience, like when you do these kinds of things where a group of artists come together and learn, like what do you notice is the effect on that community or on those people?
I think it probably would be like bridging different art circles, because like when we invite different artists to come together, we actually invite them from different disciplines. So it could be like a researcher, it could be a journalist, it could be a visual artist, musicians, theater performer. So these group of people actually usually won't really cross their path in their daily life, and it's I'm not sure it's a really phenomenon or something, but actually different group of people or different group of artists don't really cross a lot. For example, like people who are doing visual artists, they might see a lot of exhibition, but they might not be like seeing a lot of theater play. And for those who are really devoted in theater. They might not have the time to check out other exhibition. So somehow there is an invisible boundary between like the different disciplines. So what we try to gather these people that we wish to build more connections or path that people could cross even after our program. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the educational setting or the workshop learning setting works against this kind of sectioning off of the different mediums. Yeah, I mean, that's something in New York, I regard that as like a huge problem. Like the different artistic mediums, like the dominant mediums, right? Music, dance, theater, poetry, fine arts, fashion, whatever, are incredibly sequestered from one another, right? Like if you could be deep in New York, deep in the music scene, like doing your thing, and probably have no idea what's happening in poetry. You know what I mean? And there's a huge apparatus in New York City for poetry. There's incredible organizations. There's incredible people doing great work, right? There's more connection between music and the fine arts world, but even there, it's very limited. And it happens only in terms of certain kinds of initiatives and interests. Dance is another setting, and theater, they're all very, very separated from one another. So is that an experience that you also have in Hong Kong, that the disciplines are quite separate, or is there more interconnectivity? Because in New York, the problem is that every discipline becomes like an industry. Do you see what I mean? So you're in dance, and so you're like thinking about dancers and dance institutions and dance theaters and dance master's degree programs and dance teachers, and you're just like dance. You know what I mean? And so people live their entire lives and have their entire careers entirely in this one setting. And often, even within those settings, people get siloed off into specific zones within the dance community or within the theater community or poetry or music or whatever. And, I think that if you ask your average person, is it better if all different types of artists all know each other and intermingle and exchange ideas? Basically, everybody would say yes. But in practice, once you're a professional artist, you're kind of like do this like dive into your thing, and then you like don't really look up to think about what's happening in other worlds of the broader cultural sphere. This is what I experienced in New York, but how is that in Hong Kong, and is that related to your educational initiatives?
Well, I guess it's more like the same in Hong Kong, because like if you're used to your like comfort zone, people would just stay there and then trying to maybe work with different people in that group. But then like for Soundpocket, maybe like for sound, this category, it's more like we're in between, because we can be in cinema, we can be in theater, we can be in any different kind of art forms. But then because of this like possibility of doing like many things, that's why people would come to us from like a university, like Museum of Art or some other literature magazine. They would invite us to see like what we can do with them, to explore some like new angles on seeing their work or their medium. So I think this is kind of like what we're building up on this one. And
right, because having your thing be sound itself does grant you have like a passport. You can go from theater to dance to poetry to music, to the fine arts world, because every enclave of art practice has a relationship to sound, right? Like everybody, theater, sound designers, dance, music, obviously, there is this relationship to sound. So if you make your primary thing sound itself, then you can sort of move in any of those directions seamlessly because you're not committed to any of those like dominant mediums. Is that right?
Right, like filling the gaps. And also like for poetry, you have to read aloud too. It's like some kind of sound to people.
Oh yeah.
Them too. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. Yeah, that's why I'm interested in space, like physical space, because I mean, I run a venue in New York City called H0L0, and it's always kind of crazy to me how a physical space can be something and function as something when a certain group of people are in it and they're doing something, and then they leave and another group comes in and it just becomes something else. Do you know what I mean? Oh, sorry. It's sort of similar to the sound idea in the sense that it's everywhere, right? Like every kind of person, everybody doing whatever they're doing needs space for something. You know what I'm saying? So if you have a physical space, you can have a community activist meeting and then have a rap concert and then have some kind of party or some sort of meditation or something. And then the space just like effortlessly becomes that thing. And anyways, it just sounds kind of similar to your interest in sound.
Yeah, I mean, like we have been like throughout the 10 years, we have been working with different venues. From the earlier, like around Sound Festival, we have been having holding our exhibitions in Ferry Pier. There's like usually people who take the ferry would go there. It's like people like for us who doesn't need the ferry wouldn't go. But then we have been inviting artists from different countries to come and have exhibitions and also performances there, so that in this way more people would be attracted to the space and to see like what can be happen there. And like for the train performance too, like we've mentioned earlier, and yeah, also the upcoming exhibition like at some storefronts. Like I don't know if it's a I won't say it's a tradition, but then we have been exploring different spaces because like for Soundpocket, we have like field desk and also a bookshelf in our office. That's all we have. That's why we are like working with different venues or possibility to see what we can do in different spaces, as what you have talked about.
Well, yeah, that was actually the next thing that I wanted to talk about was that so you guys move around from space to space to space to space, and you also are active in multiple countries, in Hong Kong and Japan and Taiwan, you were saying. And I'm curious if that's I mean, it sounds to me that that's very intentional, that that's how you want to be working because you want to go to where the sound is or present sound in different settings. But do you ever have as a goal that you would have your own space?
We actually haven't had this discussion before, but I think it might be an answer of no.
Good answer.
Because, like, yeah. Because like like despite of all the like practical considerations that owning a space in Hong Kong, it's really more interesting to going all around the cities.
Yeah.
Because like it's not only about like specific spots, even when we could thinking of doing things on transportation, and it's something that it's less rigid and it's also like could have different possibilities, because like there are very interesting, and also because like Hong Kong it changes very rapidly. Those places, if we go, like we visit like last year, might not be the same, looking exactly the same like in 2 years, or even like the building has been demolished, or like things happen every day like this. So that by doing like programs or like bring the audience and also to the artists to like these places in the city is somehow actually could being like a witness of the city as well. Like
Mhm.
it's not only like if putting everything within our own space, yeah,
Mhm.
but we go around, yeah.
No, hearing you talk is making me jealous because because when you run a space, you're a huge amount of your energy and attention and like ultimately your creative energy is going into like, do we have toilet paper? Like, is this working? We need, like in New York, there's all of these government agencies that come and check on you and inspect you all the time. And like, so you have to always be like you know, like fire extinguishers, you know what I mean? Like you
Yeah.
have there's these little tabs on the fire extinguisher, and like every month you have to go initial that you checked the fire extinguisher. So there's like a million details like this. Oh, we have to initial the fire extinguisher in case the fire department comes, or like, and then whatever, if you have sound equipment, it's always breaking, and then you have to send it and get it repaired. And so like this is really like a giant amount of what you're thinking about are things like this. You know what I mean? Which has its own kind of depth to it, because you know, things happen in the world, and when they happen, there needs to be somewhere where they can happen, and someone has to be the custodian of that place. Do you know what I mean? Or else nothing can happen, right? If everybody stopped taking care of spaces, life would become very difficult, right? So it's not that it's not meaningful. It is meaningful, but that's what you're thinking about a lot of the time. Like for me, for the first 3.5 years of this space, I was doing like everything. And you know, a huge amount of my energy, most of my energy is just going into the basics of thinking about a space. Is this safe? Do we have what we need? Are we going to be able to answer to the authorities when they come and not be shut down or given a fine or something, so on and so forth. So when I hear you guys talk about moving around the city and like going to the ferry and like it's just like, it sounds very nice.
I mean, like this remind me of something, like why we always want to talk to different people and like use different spaces is that, like you mentioned about artist gathering, right? Sometimes like we have like artists who we have been working with to introduce them, like to connect people. We usually would look for some artist studio or like some art spaces that are available around. And there was this artist studio, it's owned by like two artists, called Lo Kaoye, and they have like collection of different instrument and also their comics and stuff. So that we had once an artist gathering there a few years ago, and we have been talking to that artist that recently we have been working with her again to work on a project that we take people to different elevators to listen to the sound of the elevators in some industrial buildings. There's like some connection we have been like in the past, and then it reminds us of something that we will always go back to these people, and maybe we can work on something like interesting or some new projects too. That's
amazing. Yeah, you're giving me ideas. I want to ask you more about your community, but I have a quick question. This is just an aside. Are you guys familiar with the new streaming platform ODA? ODA?
Not really.
Oh, it's really interesting. I think that you guys should meet. They actually did the first ever Place of Assembly podcast with me, and they're friends of mine. But they made this speaker that is essentially just a very, very, very nice, beautiful wooden like Bluetooth speaker, but it's connected to I suppose an app which they use to send programming to the speaker. So the speaker can be used as a speaker if nothing is being programmed by ODA. But when ODA's programming comes on, it just comes on the speaker in your home and you can't turn it off. I mean, you could turn the speaker off, but you can't override it.
Okay.
And then they curate all of these artists like a venue, essentially. Like on Monday it's this, on Tuesday it's this. Like they have like Terry Riley and like all of these people are doing it. But they also, and this is where I think you guys should talk about, they also go to like interesting places in the world. Like right now they're doing an activation in Spain where this small village that has this ancient festival is preparing for their annual festival, and they put microphones around the town, and they are creating this environment where the people who have the speaker can just turn it on and just hear what's happening in this town in Spain at this moment. And then after a season, they do it in like seasons, you know, and after a season, then they'll move it and they'll put it somewhere in some other interesting part of the world where there has some sort of interesting sound aspect to it. And then that just will come on the speaker and people will be sort of transported to this place, you know? So it seems like you guys should have a conversation.
Yeah, the elevator project would be something interesting. Like if anyone around the world are interested in the industrial buildings in Hong Kong. I mean, they're changing so fast. Some of the elevators may be like demolished or removed after a few years. So it would be great. Maybe we can talk to them and see what happens.
Yeah, no, for sure. After our podcast, I'll loop you guys in. Anyways, I'm gonna go back to the podcast. I'm gonna go on here. So this is something that I'm wondering, because you're talking a lot about all of your activations and classes and exhibitions. Do you have does Soundpocket have like a community that orbits around Soundpocket, or are you mainly working with a lot of different communities? Do you understand what I mean? Like when you guys do exhibitions and stuff, have you cultivated like a community of people that tend to come to your exhibitions, or is it like very, very different from thing to thing to thing to thing? Do you see what I mean?
Yeah. But I think like we have slowly building up our own community like throughout the past decades. From artists that, for example, like we, as mentioned, we have do the artist program. So it's already like 17 artists have been like being supported by this program. So we have started building this alumni of like 17 artists. And also for audience, we have been also like gathering different contacts from different events. So we have build up our own like mailing list that we could spread the news. But also it also like as you said that by different projects that we receive from different organizations, always there will be new audience or new community that we'll be reaching. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. So it's kind of like both. Yes,
both.
That's amazing. Okay, I have one last question for you guys, but it's a big question. So don't don't think you're like gonna get out of here in 2 minutes. But so it's a big question, and it's a weird question, and it's also something that I talked about on the show with a guy named Micah Silver, who's a really interesting guy who's done a lot of work around sound and audio. And he runs a space in LA that I also think you would find interesting called Black Hole. That's a space entirely devoted to audio. So the way that you guys use the word sound, he talks about audio. So the space is for audio. So it's an incredibly beautiful, hi-fi, amazing sound system. And it's like, and they have a library of sound art, and they also commission things for their room, and people book the space like by the hour. So it's like a venue, but they're not trying to get a lot of people to come all at once. You go and book an appointment, and then you can come in and like listen to all of these sounds and sound art and audio on their system. And then your appointment is over and you leave and the next person comes. It's a very interesting venue model. And I was talking about this with him, and I want to ask you guys about this. It has to do with music, but I want to ask you the question because you're so interested in sound in general. And like I said, it's a weird question. I just want to see what your take on this is. It seems to me as a musician that because of the way that media is evolving, like via the internet and whatnot, that that music itself is becoming less of a primary medium, meaning when an artist releases music, they almost always do so in the form of a video. Maybe not only in the form of a video, but like video is such a dominant part of how music is related with, right? Like, especially if you look in like popular music, right? Like if you look at popular music, when a song comes out, there's a video. I mean, you can hear the audio on Spotify and everything, but it's almost like that's secondary. It's almost like people are listening to the audio to remind them of this experience they had when they watched the video or something. And like a big part of the medium of music is becoming to like message and like telegraph about some type of lifestyle experience or person, using images and other experiences. And when you go to concerts, there has to be like all of these immersive environments and all of these other attributes surrounding music, like in order to justify the music, you know? And then the actual just sound-based musical artifact is becoming like secondary to all of these other experiences that people are creating around music. Do you understand what I mean? And that if it continues along this trajectory, right, that music itself could be in like 50 years could be regarded almost like as like sound design. Do you understand what I'm getting at? And I'm wondering if you've ever thought about that, or if not, what you think about that. As people who are dominantly concerned about sound, I'm curious to hear what you think.
Like, so just to so you said like music is a kind of sound design.
What I'm saying is that because of the dominance of like video and photo and all of these other things that have to surround music in order to kind of like justify and make the case for music, the actual like sound aspect of music itself is becoming like a secondary medium to like visual mediums and whatnot. Do you see what I mean? Like if you listen, like Beyonce puts out Lemonade, but she puts it out as like a series of movies. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, imagine if Beyonce had just put out the sound, like no visuals, no videos, right? It's almost impossible to imagine that someone would do that. Do you know what I mean? Like, because of the way media has evolved in our consciousness as people, dominantly because of the internet, it's like the actual sound aspect of music is like less important than projecting all of this visual content, you know? And I wonder because of that, if music isn't evolving to become something more like sound design in theater. Do you see what I'm saying? Like where the visual piece, or if you look at TikTok, right? It's like TikTok, it's like all about sound, but like you can't imagine having it without all of the images. You follow what I'm saying? It's like people relate to sound in music through images and then the sound.
I personally, I don't think it will be like less important, as you say. Because I know there is definitely a very strong like bonding between visual and music or visual sound nowadays, because like all we're using on seeing on our smartphone is very visual. But still, I think sound or music could be more than visual, because like I'm saying, because like visual, if there is only a visual but without a sound, it is what it is.
Good point.
But if you put the visual with different type of sound or music, it become like something totally different. It gives different like context, or it gives different moods about it, because like it actually reminds me one of the workshop that we did for Unconstrained Tone, that the artist mentor invite the artist to found like different found footage on YouTube, and they put the YouTube with different sound or different audio, and it's I remember it's an advertising of a baby something shampoo, yes, shampoo for baby. And when you put it with a very creepy music, it tell a total different narrative of the advertisement. So that what music or sound could add on the show, it's it's a lot. It's few possible. Yeah.
Amazing. Vanessa, I want to hear what you think, but I'm realizing I have to plug my computer in. So give me 1 second and I will edit this out. 1 second.
Okay.
Okay, back. So Vanessa, do you have like a hot take on that, or like what do you think?
Well, first of all, when you talk about like there are always like music, like videos or images that goes with music, like for those songs, usually like pop songs too. Sometimes the image or visuals can actually kill the song. I would say that because, like for me, for my personal preference, if I am to listen to a new song, I'll just listen to it first, like to see what I can take from there, and like maybe in our own imagination, it can relate it to some experience that it's connect to me personally. But then somehow, like if you go on YouTube and you search for the song and you see the music video, somehow it will make me think that the song itself is good enough to go on its own, instead of like having the video of people doing, I don't know, like their way of interpretation that I don't get it, and I don't like that way to go with the song, if you know what I mean. And then like for sound, would it become secondary? I don't think so, like what Mandy has mentioned. And also why we have been working so much on asking people to, not asking, like encouraging people to be sensitive to their environment, not just like visually, because as we have talked about, sound always gives us more imagination, and also how people perceive it, it's also always related to their background, and also like where they go or people they talk to. Like how you describe one sound would be like one audio clip would be totally different from me, and this is what can make the discussion carry on. I think this is like what sound give us, and we should appreciate it. And like the way we listen to people, if we just like continue, like listen and hearing is different, right? We can hear many things, but you need the consciousness to listen, and this is like what we have been promoting. I think this is like a crucial element for more people to know. That's why like we're here, I think.
Amazing. Well, I knew that you guys would have interesting feedback about that, and I know that it's kind of a crazy thing to suggest. And so actual last question. So what are you working on now? What's coming up?
So like we have been talking about this artist support program. This is our 10th year, so we will be doing a showcase of artist work in this storefront that I've talked about, like in this like old style popular 80s 90s shopping mall. And then we'll be curating some online concerts too that would collaborate with ESS in the quarantine concert in late May. So yeah, stay tuned for our program.
Yeah,
Follow
absolutely.
us on Facebook and Instagram. We got like Instagram a few months ago.
Oh,
So
good.
please follow us.
Cool. Well, guys, thank you so much for coming on Place of Assembly. It was so great to talk to you guys and learn about your organization and learn about what you're doing with sound in Hong Kong.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay, cool. And we will be in touch.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
All right, bye.
Bye.
All right, deep dive. Amazing to have those two on the show. Soundpocket, Hong Kong, concerts and trains, listening tours of elevators, storefront exhibition installations, and so on, libraries, facilitating, organizing. Soundpocket is what's up in Hong Kong. You heard it here. Next week, we've got part 3 of this series on China and Hong Kong. We'll be welcoming to the show DJ Shannon of Chengdu, now relocated back to New York due to COVID, but DJ Shannon of Chengdu nonetheless. And we will also be revisited by our indefatigable co-host Alan Huang of Awesome Agency Asia. So turn up for that. Thanks for checking out Place of Assembly, Experimental Sound Studio Chicago, 8-Ball Radio, Hollow NYC. Support us on Patreon. Link in bio, and peace.